Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce one of Australia's leading and most respected wine professionals. Annette Lacey is Group Beverage Director for Solotel, overseeing a large and diverse range of hospitality venues in Sydney, which includes Matt Moran's multi-award-winning restaurants. She completed the rigorous Master of Wine program in 2020 and is a certified WSET educator, focusing on developing the next generation of wine professionals. Annette was also selected for the highly prized Len Evans tutorial and was winner of the prestigious 2014 Vin de Champagne Awards professional category, which is where I first got to know her. She has been an associate judge at numerous wine shows around Australia and participates in trade and educational tastings, presentations and masterclasses. Over the years, I've gotten to know Annette as co-presenter of one of my events in Sydney, but also as a contributor to Vine and Bubble, where her knowledge and passion for champagne has clearly shined through. So, Annette, you have a very extensive history working in management and operational roles across all levels of restaurants and hospitality venues in Australia, but your passion has always been with wine and especially champagne. So when did you discover champagne properly, and how did your interest in champagne develop?
Well, Sarah, my champagne actually was my introduction to wine, because I have told this story before. I don't know if you've heard it, but I used to be a restaurant manager in a restaurant in Sydney, and we had a rep come round and show us some champagne, and it was Krug, the Grand Cuvée. So I'd never had it before, and when I tried it, I actually understood what he was saying about the layers and the complexity, and I could taste the richness. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is so amazing. You know, you hear about people that talk about wine like this, but to actually be able to do it as a novice, I have to learn everything right now. So from that, I left managing restaurants and I went over to the wine side and started to train as a sommelier.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's how that, yeah, it was.
So you forged a pathway based on champagne?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I have told Olivier Krug this story as well when he came to visit us in Sydney, he was very excited to hear it.
Yeah. And what an amazing journey that's been. Tasting champagne is not like tasting any other wine, obviously. It's very different. So I'm just wondering, how have you developed your personal palate over the years, and what suggestions can you provide for listeners wanting to understand how to develop their own palate?
I think you still need to treat champagne like a wine. So I think, you still need to look for the same things, but it's the bubbles that carry the flavor through the palate as well. So I think practice obviously makes perfect. So you need to try as much champagne as possible. But I also think that you need to try to find the flavors that you like in champagne. So maybe you would start with, the solid houses that produce a non-cuvée style all the time. Then you get used to a champagne house's style. So then you have the experience to be experimental with new cuvées and new styles, because there's always a new champagne. Whenever you go into a retail store or you go into a restaurant, there's always a new champagne that you haven't tried. And in Australia, we don't get to see a lot. So I think, for me, I'm always excited to try new champagnes, because I'm like, oh, I haven't tried that. I want to see what their style is like. So as a consumer trying to navigate that without the experience of having tried a lot of champagne, you just have to, in a restaurant experience, you have to speak to the sommelier. They would have picked that particular cuvée for whatever quality they were looking for, or to go with the food. So I think use the people around you as well. Mm-hmm. Use the sommeliers or the retail assistants that are very passionate, and take some risks and try to write a vocabulary. Like sometimes I have to teach at WSET, and we do a section on champagne and sparkling wine, and you use the same descriptors for champagne but different, because you look for autolytic complexity. You have to first figure out what is autolytic complexity before you can start telling people what it is. So it's the bakery, it's the Marmite, so when you start recognizing those characters, then that's how you build on your tasting palette. But you don't get it overnight. Yeah. Like you must as well know that, it takes years to get your champagne vocabulary correct.
Yeah. It is different to still wine, and, you know, and I have people saying this to me all the time, and I think I've been through WSET as well. And, you know, you do apply, I guess, that structured approach to wine tasting that you do in general to wine. But there are some, you know, nuances to champagne that don't apply to still wines. And, you know, and that's the challenge, I guess, for people is trying to understand that there's really this other layer to champagne that is so much more complex than other wines. So it's really, as I guess you're saying, really coming down to experience. It's really just tasting and really pushing yourself in that area, but having that beautiful foundation, obviously, to give you that structure, you know, to understanding the wine that is in front of you.
Yeah, and I think wine is a good introduction to actually learning how to taste champagne, because that's how you can go, well, okay, I understand, you know that, well, hopefully you know that, you know, there's lots of options for champagne production, like there's oak, there's malolactic, you know, there's grapes, there's a whole lot of things. So if you understand those basic vinification techniques, that's going to help you hopefully see that in champagne, but you have to look harder, and you have to, you know, you have to work through the bubbles and try to see what the different layers.
Deconstruct those bubbles to get to the wine beneath.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But the bubbles are the best bit as well.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to completely remove them. I know.
Because I know people that shake the glass to get rid of the bubbles to try the champagne. I'm like, oh,
why?
Why?
That is the magic. Yes, I understand. So you were also the winner of the prestigious Vin de Champagne Award in Australia under professional category back in 2014. And I'm wondering for you, what was that experience like, and how did it encourage your personal journey with champagne?
So it was such a thrill to win the award. And I think if you go back a step, it's also about preparing yourself for the day of the exam. You know, you submit essays, you know, 6 essays. So it's not like you walk in there and you just taste and you win this award. You actually have to have done your homework to be even considered to sit the tasting exam. So I love that it's not just a tasting exam, which kind of evens the playing field. And, you know, the questions are never easy questions. So you have to study. And I really liked that there was a real process. You know, you get to go to Champagne for 2 weeks, and that's like amazing. You know, just visiting every region, the 5 regions of Champagne, going to meet the little producers. Yeah, and so, as I said before, there's so much champagne we don't see in Australia.
Yeah.
And, you know, these people are so passionate about what they're doing, you know, whether it's, you know, a zero dosage cuvee, or it's 100% variety, or it's a total, you know, single vineyard, you know, that they're really proud of. And even like the big houses that produce the consistent style, you know, there's so much attention to detail. And, you know, it's a really exciting region. And I love that, you know, there's that whole connection between the food and the wine and the region and, you know, the people. It's, you know, you could say it for any region really, but it's also just spending 2 weeks in a wine region is such a luxury, because normally you're flitting through here and there, and
for a few days here or there.
And 2 weeks, you know, you know, the CIVC were fantastic. Like they chaperone you the whole time, and it was just an amazing experience. And just I ate in people's houses as well. You know, this amazing generosity of spirit was beautiful. So I suppose then when you get back and you come back to earth, you're like, well, you know, how do I, you know, share my knowledge and my passion? And it comes down to basics. When people talk to you about champagne, you're like, well, and they talk about sparkling wine, and you know, it's really fun to kind of say, well, you know, it's actually quite different. It's not sparkling wine. It is, but it's actually champagne. It's totally different.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's
sparkling wine from Champagne.
It's sparkling wine from Champagne.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may appear quite simple, but when you go into the nuances of, you know, viticulture and vinification and, you know, the success of their marketing and, there's nothing like drinking champagne, to be honest.
Yeah.
It is, not to say anything about any other sparkling wine, but when you're drinking champagne, it's got a distinct style, and it's so, I suppose it's just, it consolidated what I knew, and even when you think you know a lot about it, you still know nothing. So it's just that quest to keep learning, and how do I get every bit of information I can. I need to go there more often.
Yes, of course, obviously. Yeah. Yes, stripping away the layers to get to champagne. So obviously you taste champagne on a regular basis, and you have a wide-ranging experience with producers and styles. And I'm thinking that your experience in champagne really contributed to all of that as well. So who are some of the producers that you are personally passionate about, and why? And what styles of champagne are your personal favourites?
Look, I am passionate about a lot of champagne. I love the style, and I think that I really respect the big houses that manage to every year produce the consistency of style that consumers seek. But I also love, like most wine people, you love the small producer.
Of course.
And you love to see the small producer be successful, and they might only have 1 hectare of land, or they may have a really interesting method of production like a perpetual solera or whatever. They've got these really interesting ways of creating texture and flavour. So I know, I really like the interesting styles. Like I love Provost's, Meunier, like that, the La Closerie is delicious. It's just layered and complex and vinous, and every time you have a sip you taste something else. But that's not to say anything negative about a beautiful clean Blanc de Blanc. Like Taittinger Comte looks stunning, every time you have a sip it's amazing. A little producer like Etienne Calsac, he makes another Meunier based wine. So I have a broad range of loves. Like I love Hyde 6 vintage rosé. There's so many. Like I would hate to just
narrow it down.
But I think when I am tasting champagne, I also look for styles that the customer would like. So they don't have necessarily the knowledge. They might be a little bit intimidated by a name they don't recognise. So I think the big champagne houses have done that really well, because they provide a consistency of style that people can trust in. So, we all want to push champagne in our venues, because we know that it's a great way to start the meal, drink through the meal, or finish a meal. So I think if, you entice them with a name they know, and then they trust you, and then you get them to drink your little special grower that you've got, or, a still wine from Champagne. They're also really interesting. There's a whole layer of underneath that kind of, when you first try, then you go in and you again, it's relying on people in the business to help you have an amazing champagne journey.
So it's really giving people a sense of trust in your advice, and they start off with something that I guess is, meeting their expectations for what champagne should be, and then maybe going a little bit deeper, into that journey, and maybe exploring things that they don't expect from champagne, but that represents the beauty and the diversity of champagne at the same time.
And things like they haven't thought of, like, oak in champagne is, it adds so much texture. And like Krug will always hold a place in my heart, the Grand Cuvée, because, it was my kind of, my gateway to champagne that, and I really like oak in my champagne. I really like those vinous styles, but also love the purity of a Blanc de Blanc. So I'm not fussy, or I'm not just stuck in one way. I will definitely try some different styles as well.
Yeah, but there are obviously some historical reference points for you in your personal journey that it's almost like an aha moment for you.
Yes.
Like epiphany almost, wow, this is meaningful, this is amazing, and it's sort of really set your journey, which is lovely. Yeah. So I'm just wondering then, obviously working in hospitality with restaurants, with people who come in looking for an amazing experience, when recommending champagne to be paired with food, there are some general principles, obviously, when it comes to your considerations around champagne and food. And I'm just wondering, what sort of, I guess, tips can you suggest to listeners insofar as, when selecting champagne from a wine list, what should they be looking for that is going to complement the food that they end up having?
And I think the beauty of champagne is it does go with so many foods. If you think of, champagne and oysters is the most classic pairing. But if you think of all kind of appetizer kind of foods, that, that non-vintage, you can't really go wrong with, a beautiful glass or a bottle of non-vintage champagne to, while you're sitting there looking at the menu and you're choosing your wines, or, are you going to have the degustation? And then I think if you, obviously definitely use the sommelier if the menu has a sommelier, because they have innate knowledge on the list. But I think also don't be afraid to drink it during the meal. Champagne, if you start with a lighter style, I would move through weights. I would go through like maybe a Blanc de Blanc to a Rosé to a Blanc de Noir. And, you can finish, you don't have to finish with a sweet wine. You can finish with a champagne. But I think you have to think about what you're eating. I think that's the most important thing. And you really need to remember, are you really going to make that big a mistake? You're probably in a beautiful restaurant eating amazing food, drinking champagne. You can kind of make it work in your mind anyway, right? Like, I think
you won't be disappointed.
I don't think you will be, right? Because you just have to remember that sometimes the most unlikely pairings with the food and the aromas and the view.
Yes.
It's the complete package. It's not
Correct.
Always, oh my God, my tomato salad didn't match perfectly with my Blanc de Blanc champagne. Like, it's
all things in consideration,
absolutely.
Right? It's the atmosphere, it's the company, it's everything.
It's the occasion and but also some of the best meals I've had champagne through the whole meal. So it's a very versatile style, and also the bubbles give it body, so it can carry through those heavier main course style meals. So you don't have to, if you love champagne, you should drink it all meal.
Yeah.
The whole meal. That's the beauty of, exploring and, and using people in the venues. Sommeliers usually know what they're doing.
Leveraging that into your experience.
Yes.
Yeah, good advice. So there appears to be a massive increase in diversity represented on wine lists at top restaurants and bars at the moment. Are you noticing any trends in the hospitality industry when it comes to the type of champagne customers are demanding?
So one thing we have noticed that, people are tending to spend more money. So we're seeing, a greater beverage spend per head because they're, I don't know if they're trading up or they want a better experience. And we've noticed this post-COVID. So that has been a really great way to, we've seen our lists price points increase, and we are seeking out wines that are in that premium spectrum because we are getting people wanting those styles.
Demanding more.
Yeah, so that is fantastic because, champagne is a premium product. It commands a high price. So, you want to, we're finding that people have got no problem spending the money for the, the top cuvées.
Yeah.
And then we're also seeing the other trend is that people are, they're really concerned about where it's come from, how it's made, that kind of sustainable, ethical perspective. So I think that and I know that champagne has that viticulture durable,
certification, VDC.
Yes. So I think, those things are going to hold that style of wine in a really good stead because they want to know the story. That's also why I think grower champagne has done so well, because people are like, I went to Champagne and I met this person and they've got 1 hectare and this is all they do and this is the one wine they make and they've come from this house or whatever. So I think, the story is really important, which, I mean, every sommelier loves a story. So, it's how you sell. That's how you sell your products, is by telling them,
communicating the message,
and having that personal touch. So I think it more, premium cuvées, but they don't always have to be expensive. They could also be a little producer that isn't as well known, but he's got a great story, or he's ethical viticulture, or he's doing a mono cuvee that is, quite rare, all of those things. The world is such a accessible place nowadays. We can get whatever information we want whenever we want.
Of course.
So, you might suggest a champagne. They're straight away on their phone checking out what you've said. It's the truth. There is no room for error. So you need to be passionate about what you're putting forward.
Yeah. I think authenticity is the main message.
Yes.
You really have to be across what you're promoting, be passionate about it, but authentic about it.
Yes.
And because, as you say, people can just access that information faster than you can sometimes.
And also, they put that picture on Insta to say, hey, I'm in this amazing venue drinking this amazing champagne. They want the likes, they want all of this. And it's important for them, and it's important for the venue that, it's a double duty kind of.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, you've had this amazing journey with wine, but specifically with champagne, and there's obviously been these milestones, these moments in time that have spurred you along with your passion. Has there been any one person or any one producer that you feel that has been a wonderful mentor for you along the way, encouraging your journey? But, I'm just even thinking those experiences, you mentioned the Grand Cuvée, and I'm just wondering, what has it been about Grand Cuvée? Has there been something in your life that's happened around Grand Cuvée? Or, I think champagne goes beyond taste. It's beyond the profile of what we're experiencing. It's about a moment in time. It's about a person or something that you think, wow, gosh, that's defining for me, and spurs your interest along,
Yeah. I have, but they're not champagne people. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's all right. That's fine. Like if there's been somebody here in Sydney or whatever that you think has been a wonderful guiding point for you in your journey,
I suppose it was more, someone gave me, once I'd tasted champagne and I was like, I need to find out what this champagne, this wine caper is, because it's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
And I went to one of the well-known restaurants in Sydney, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but he was a really well-known French sommelier, and he kind of took me under his wing and gave me the opportunity to learn about wine, which, includes champagne. And I think people giving you their time and nurturing you, especially when you're young and you actually don't really know that much, even you're on your course of learning. So I think people giving you time and taking you on those journeys, and then going overseas. When you go overseas, especially when I went to Vin de Champagne, they really looked after you. Like they take you everywhere. They make sure that your experience is really memorable, and it is. And there's been so many amazing champagnes that you've tried, and I agree with you. They're all linked to amazing moments.
Yeah.
Whether it's a new release of a new release of a cuvee or a vintage, or you're sitting somewhere with someone special and you're reminiscing about something, and you're just drinking the champagne. And I mean, champagne plays a big role in a lot of my events, especially celebrations or sitting outside and enjoying the summer, which I'm looking forward to coming. There's always a champagne in it, because life's too short. You've got to enjoy every moment, so you don't want to forget it. So I love that it reminds you of I love that there's certain champagnes that take you to a certain place. Yeah. So I think that's really the most important
part
thing
of your journey.
Yeah.
So that ties into my next question then. Yeah. Can you point to one or two specific moments in time for you that have been really memorable with champagne?
Well, because Krug was such a pivotal moment in my life, and I loved it from the second I tried it. At our wedding, we had it on the bridal table. So we made sure that, obviously, I converted my husband to Krug, which wasn't very hard. But, we drank it on our wedding day. So that was, every anniversary we drink a bottle of Krug.
Oh.
Except when I was pregnant, I think I might have had a sip, and never forget, because it's so easy to forget,
Oh, yeah.
lots of, the most important things. So definitely Krug was one of those moments. And then when I passed my FW, I drank 2012 Dom Perignon, because all my really close girlfriends came up and people that had been part of the long journey. And they came up and we just had some Dom and we were just drinking it, and nothing ever tastes good like success tastes so good.
Oh, yeah.
And, it was a beautiful champagne. I'd had it lying down for, I don't know, obviously at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And just to open it and drink it, those pure moments are really, you just,
unforgettable.
Yeah,
right?
They really are unforgettable. And then once, I remember I once bought some vintage Lanson Black Label and laid it down for so long. It was in 1996 and I drank it like a couple of years ago. And it was, and you never know because, you never know. But opened it with some really close wine friends and it was just perfect.
Yeah.
It was honeyed and intense and rich, and it just, there was just the most beautiful aged characters. It had still really nice fine bead. And it was just like, that's why you buy it and you lay it down and you never know what's going to happen.
It's time, right? Time and patience and it rewards.
And you're just like, wow, God, I'm glad I'm really happy that I bought it when I probably couldn't afford it and laid it down and shared it with great friends. So, it's all about moments really.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Well, Annette, I want to say thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah.
And honestly, your journey has been amazing. You are one of the most established people in Australia when it comes to food and hospitality. You are so celebrated, master of wine, so highly respected. Your palate's amazing. I've had the privilege of spending so much time with you, and it's been a wonderful insight into your personal champagne journey. And I'm so glad that you share the same passion that I also share for champagne. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to talk about champagne. We could talk about it all night, I think. But no, thank you again for your time as well.
My pleasure. And santé.
Santé. Cheers.
Vine & Bubble is a boutique and independent information source dedicated exclusively to telling the real story of champagne. It was launched by me, Sarah Underdown, in November 2018 after almost a decade of working in the champagne industry as a recognised writer, educator and presenter. Vine & Bubble brings together a network of Australian wine journalists, sommeliers, educators and industry representatives as regular contributors. As a team of champagne lovers and communicators, we are thrilled to share our united passion with wine-loving audiences. To read more about champagne, to subscribe to events in Australia and learn more about opportunities to join us for experiences in champagne, visit vineandbubble.com and register your details.